Remember my big $3 word, Terpsichore? It's a word that describes an art form known as the dance. How are you at dancing? If you're like me, and I hope there isn't anyone else on planet Earth who is like me in this area, you're a disaster, a spectacle, an embarrassment, and a disgrace. Dancing, to use vernacular from the street, it ain't in my repertoire of God-given talents. And that is a grotesque understatement. You do not want to be anywhere near me when the dancing endeavor comes along, unless I'm acting like a clown, and I can still do some of that. But that's just something to laugh at, because dancing is an art form. I have a picture here behind me of a very flamboyant dance competition on a stage that I just pulled off the computer. Dancing is an art form because it is a form of finesse, and a person can dance individually. But often the greatest finesse in the art of dancing comes when two people are involved, and they learn to anticipate what the other is doing, and they develop rhythm and beauty. It can be romantic, it can be expressive. Like I say, there are individuals who do it well too. There's an art form called liturgical dance, where dance can actually be done in a worship setting to express a particular mood or scriptural or theological meaning. We don't do that often in United Methodist settings. Perhaps we should do it more, but then again, not everybody's good at it. But it's the idea of finesse in dancing that I want to think with you about in today's devotional. Thank you for tuning in yet again and for being my friend. We've been in a dance, all of us, even people who can't dance, who shouldn't dance, who should never dance in front of other people. We've all been in a different sort of dance now for more than 6 months with our coronavirus pandemic. And I want to go back and show you a brief clip that came back in the early stages of the shelter-in-place orders, when we really were uncertain of what we were getting into, and the level of contagiousness, the impact on our health and death rates, hospital capacities, personnel capacities were all in question. And so the shutdown, even from church, was real. We're going to see just the very end of when we were still trying to do a Wednesday night service. It was on tape by then, or video by then. We can't do it in person. But the first few weeks before we started the devotionals, we tried to stick to that. And this came right at the end of the message. And John Moran commented to me how this particular Wednesday night installment got a whole lot of views and was shared by a whole lot of people, because it kind of explained what we were in for. Let's watch this clip, and then we'll finish. Let me finish the update tonight by dealing with three things that I see are the obvious things before us. Number one is our worry and our helplessness over the spread of this disease. And understand that our ability to respond to this is respecting the guidance that we're getting with social distancing. It is a horrific inconvenience, if not a frightening change for all of us, to adjust to being confined. But we have seen from other areas around the world where if we observe that and are willing to make the sacrifice over the short term, whatever that proves to be, we can stay ahead of this and enable our medical facilities not to be totally overwhelmed, where some persons just have to do without care, and we know the results of that. The spread is going to continue to get worse for the next several weeks. Just understand that. We were told that it was coming, and it's here. Pray. Trust God. Be aware also that fear is the natural response. Like I say, I've talked about it every week. Fear is a survival mechanism that is a response to an unknown. That's all that it is. It has served a vital function throughout human history, fight or flight. It was used against enemies from biblical times on through our great world and American history. But right now, the response is here to help us survive in the dangerous conditions, to help humanity develop new ways of ensuring safety and survival. Make sure that fear is replaced with faith, with prayer, and with trust. The hysteria that has come across some, depression and almost panic, is the result of that empty spiritual well. The difference is those who have a deep spiritual well, or who are investing now and taking advantage of this time, are those who still will have moments where you feel down, overwhelmed, depressed, discouraged. But your faith is able to draw you out of that and help you rise to objectivity and strength again. So if you have those spells, welcome. I have those. We all do. But our faith will lead us forward. And then last, and I think just as important, is I want to stop and diagnose what we're seeing on a governmental and national level in this country. Roommates need to be compatible. Husbands and wives need to be compatible. Somebody you're going to work on a project with, travel with, work with on an intimate level, you're going to be different people, but you got to be compatible. If you get two people that are totally incompatible with each other, the situation's not going to work. And that's the challenge we're facing right now as a world and especially as a nation. We have a disease that is exceedingly contagious and can be exceedingly problematic to human life. Some are just going to have mild symptoms. Some may not get it at all. Some are going to get really sick and it's going to be scary, and it's going to have a mortality rate that is high amongst many of our loved ones. It is a legitimate enemy. And the only answer we have right now until treatments are developed, if that happens at all, is the isolation and social distancing. But the other roommate you see is that of the impact it has on a capitalistic culture. The disease requires isolation and withdrawal, but a capitalistic economy requires interaction and business and transaction and all of the creativity that makes our capitalistic system work. You can't have both, and you can't deal with one without having catastrophic impacts on the other. Remove all the social restrictions and we think the economy is going to get better, but the impact on human life is going to be catastrophic. And yet if you line with the social distancing and the isolation, the impact on the economy is catastrophic. And what do? And I hope you'll be patient and prayerful and supportive of our leadership on our national level. We all know that we don't have universal appeal with either side. We get frustrated and the news media plays that up. But understand, they're just like we are. They're caught between a rock and a hard place. And you got to be creative, and let's give them the support and the prayerful objectivity they need to deal with each side and do this ebb and flow. Let one take the lead and the other lay back, and then turn it around the other way. And don't let that impossible mix of the two opposites get you down. Because it's amazing that it's situations like this where God's grace can be most powerful. When we are vulnerable, when we are put in a corner, when we're in the wine press, as Gideon was, when we are vulnerable, that's when we're attuned to the magnificence of God's grace. So don't get down. Let your faith carry you through. And let me finish here by stepping over here and just reminding you that these kinds of issues, the COVID may be new, but the threat is not new to human life, and it's not new to people of faith. Listen to the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians 4, chapter 7 and following. But we have this treasure in earthen vessels to show that the transcendent power belongs to God and not to us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed. Let that faith override the worry, the fear, the helplessness, and carry you through one day at a time, because there is life, and there is great life beyond this. Let God transform us until then. You can see from the fact that you can't deal with the disease without impacting the economy, and you can't deal with the economy without impacting the disease. That has played out. Of everything that has changed and all the things we were told that didn't prove to be true and all of the new discoveries that came about, that one element has proven to be true, and we're still dealing with it. It requires a dance. And right now we're at the point in our American society and other areas of the world as well where we're trying to dance in better rhythm. It's a finesse. It's an ebb and flow to understand what your partner is doing as we dance our way back into some form of normalcy. Schools are in the process of reopening in most cases for in-person learning, at least on a half-time or choice basis. Our church is beginning to develop in-person worship opportunities that could evolve to actually being back in the building at some point. College athletic events are happening, sometimes with people, some people not, as well as other sports endeavors. Restaurants and businesses are gradually reopening, and you're seeing people out. They're going places. There is a readiness, and yet there is still a respect for caution. It's a dance. You have to focus on one side and then have the wherewithal to go to the other side, or maybe pull back from both. And no two people are different. The Bible tells us of a great story back in the early days of Scripture, back in Genesis, of the Ark of the Covenant, when God was thought to live inside a box, which was the Ark of the Covenant, and they moved it wherever they went. And as they moved it on a cart, it was tempestuous footing, tempestuous rolling, so to speak, and it had to be carried. And if someone stepped on something and caused the carriers to lose their balance, then the Ark of the Covenant could fall. And the Bible tells us that those who were entrusted with its well-being were warned that damage to the Ark of the Covenant was punishable by death. So was touching it. And so if it's about to tilt and fall, what do? You're caught between a rock and a hard place. You're condemned if you do and condemned if you don't. The obvious instinctive reaction would be you're going to save the Ark of the Covenant based on the theology and the mindset of the day, and you'll deal with the consequence. Hopefully find a way out. That's kind of an exaggerated version of what we've been faced with. It requires a dance. It requires a finesse. And I want to suggest that there are no rules for this. Everybody has to have the freedom to make your own choices, because the context of what is safe and what is not is different for all of us. We need to respect that and not legislate it onto other people. But we need to make responsible choices ourselves. And I supported, if you remember, our government taking the lead in closing things down, because like I said at the beginning of this installment, we didn't know what we were in for yet. But now that we've got a handle on it, I applaud the efforts, especially in our part of the country, where people have been given the gift of choice to make good decisions for themselves. As we open church, some people are ready to be here, and they're going to be. Others aren't, and we need to respect that choice. But instead of us making it for them, let's empower good choices as we try this dance. And maybe the art of Terpsichore will take on new meaning, and maybe even poor old clumsy, skinny-legged, two left-footed Mark can be more effective, at least with this expression of the dance. May God be with us as we move forward. So long for now.